So we're joined here today with Daniele de Oliveira, who is a director of an early education centre and also a child behaviour expert. Thanks so much for coming on, Danielle. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day.
Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. Do you want to just maybe introduce yourself, like who you are, what you do, how you got here, things like that?
Sure. So I am originally from Brazil, and that's where I got my Bachelor of Early Childhood Education 15 years ago. And after I graduated, I moved to New Zealand, and I lived in Auckland for 11 years. After that, I moved here to Australia on the Gold Coast, and I've been living here for the past 4 years, where I have been a director of Currumbin Pines Early Learning Center since it first opened 4 years ago. And I was a director back in New Zealand as well. I've been in the industry for about 20 years.
Nice, yeah, lots of experience. So what made you want to go from working in early education as an educator to then wanting to kind of work with parents outside of the centre?
Throughout these years, I always noticed that usually children with more challenging behaviors, or something that people would think that was challenging, they were quite drawn to me. And I could see that there was a difference between my approach and the way I believe it's also a result of all the professional developments I've done and all the books I have read and my interest in this. And after having a child as well, my son is 9 now, that just made me wanted to be a better parent and a better teacher. And like when I started applying all the strategies that I learned and all the tools I had, I noticed a huge change in children's behavior. And I thought, wow, great. I can make a difference in the life of 30 children in a classroom. But if I become a director, I can make a difference in the life of 150 families, because I can teach all the strategies I know to all the educators under my care and then teach them how to manage those situations better and connect with the children more. And then I can make a much bigger difference. And now when I became a consultant, I thought, wow, I can even reach far more people. And I think the whole idea was just to make children, support children being understood. I feel like that's missing out there.
Yeah, definitely. I think we recently spoke to a speech pathologist who obviously mentioned things like, I think in terms of obviously being understood, I think there's a statistic where I think it's over half of youth offenders have some sort of communication problems. So yeah, I think I definitely agree with you there that it does start with being understood, both in in the ways of speech and then also like kind of emotionally as well.
Yeah, so true.
Do you find that the interest you had in children with challenging behaviours and working with them, do you find that benefited your relationship with the families and with parents?
Yes, it did, because I changed my point of view. And instead of seeing the children as the problems or the parents as the problem, like I joined them, and then we together were able to find out the cause of it and seeing how we could support children in that way. I have had many situations where children were having some challenging behaviors in the classroom, and we were applying strategies. And sometimes, and usually like in our center, when a child has a challenging behavior, we do a behavior guidance plan. So we can identify the triggers and we can identify the preventative strategies and the strategies of how to guide children after something happens. And after that, when we do this behavior plan, we talk to families. And we always, when we have those meetings, we always say, look, we're here, we are on your side. Like we have the same goal, which is the well-being of this child. So we're not here to attack you. We're not here to blame you or anything, because we can all support each other. And that's, I think, when you create this connection with families and they feel like you are there to support them, not to judge them, they feel much more respected, and then they will feel more confident in actually following what you have to say.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of causes of, I guess, challenging behaviours in children. Have you found a common theme or some reoccurrence of a main thing that keeps popping up with children with challenging behaviours?
Well, besides, sometimes the children could be on the spectrum, but there are other things, that only pediatricians can identify really and diagnose it. But beside these things, it's usually the relationships that they are involved in, like with families. And sometimes it's just simple things as the quality time they have with family. Sometimes we are so busy in going to work, dropping off children to daycare, and we are so busy on this that we don't have the time to slow down and just connect with the child. And sometimes parents have this misconception that it has to be for an hour or the whole afternoon. But usually children just need like 10 minutes of quality time when they're just spending that time with a family member, a mom, a dad, anybody that's really connecting with them. That's all they need to feel loved. And I think that most of the times it's just that I was reading about it one day that I don't know if you guys heard about the book Love Languages by Gary Chapman.
I actually only heard it just from stalking your Instagram prior
Yes.
to this interview. So,
So it's an amazing book, and he wrote a book about like love languages for adults relationships, and then now he wrote another one about children's love languages. And he says that there are many children that even though they are loved, they are in a family where they are loved, they don't feel loved because the family their family is not speaking the love language, their primary love language that they understand. So, and I feel that usually that's it. It's just a case of parents understanding what's the love language of that child, and you can decrease the behaviors like enormously if then parents can only understand this. So it's a case of, for example, most children up to 2 years old, their love language is touch and quality time, which you might think it's simple, but sometimes, like I said, in a busy life, we just don't have that time of touching, or some people have nannies or anything else that that just it's just they think that by just going to work or providing for the family, it would be enough, and sometimes it is. But if we can just give a little bit of that extra time for giving them an extra touch and an extra quality time, just by giving them a hug, a kiss, or just saying how much you love them, or just spending that time reading a book before bed for 5 minutes. Just having those routines in place and those ways of expressing love to children, it can make them feel loved. And then automatically their behavior challenges will decrease. Because usually that challenge, it is a cry for help or a cry for attention, because children don't know how to communicate. They don't understand those feelings inside of them. Then they communicate by acting out or screaming or hurting others.
You touched on routine just then. I mean, I as a father of three, I always had a routine with my children and structure in place. Do you find routine and structure are a key element of children with challenging behaviour?
So yes, it's definitely one of the key elements. Children need routine, because a routine, if they have a routine, it makes them feel comfortable because they know what's coming next. It's just like us. If you go to work and you're waiting for your boss to tell you what you're going to have today throughout just to do throughout the day, you feel a bit like overwhelmed, like what? So, oh, now I have to create, I don't know, this campaign for this, place, and I had no idea. I didn't have time to prepare. I didn't, or they're saying now you're going to have a meeting with this, with Bill Gates, and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't have time to prepare. Children are the same. Somehow it got lost on the way, where people just thought that because they are children, they have to do as we say. and that's fine. They have feelings and they have their insecurities just like us. So by having a consistent routine, they will know what's happening next, and they will develop a sense of comfort, which will build up their self-esteem as well, and they'll make them feel better. So by knowing what's happening, they'll be able to read their the signs and everything that they are feeling inside the body, and they will learn to understand that, okay, when I feel this, it's because I'm tired, I need to go to sleep. And they will learn to read what the body is trying to communicate to them.
Yeah, I think it's, so obviously we've kind of touched on, this is almost the kind of best case scenario, like with parents who are kind of willing to go along with this. Do you ever experience parents who maybe refuse to accept or believe their children's bad behavior, or maybe blame it on other things?
Yes, we have, because sometimes, because children, they're just like us. We have different behaviors at home, and we have different behaviors at work with our family members. We have different behaviors when we are out in a party. And children are the same. So, yes, it's very common for children not to display the same behavior at home that they do at kindy, because, in a childcare center, they are surrounded by a variety of children, different personalities. They have to share toys or take turns. That's another subject for another day, but they have to take turns with toys. They have to share the attention of the teacher, with other ones. There's a lot of things involved. So I always explain that to parents. I think when you try to put yourself in the place of the parents and see through their lenses, then you're able to engage with them and say, yes, I understand where you're coming from, but your child will develop a different behavior than home, because it's a different environment, different people, and different circumstances, even the different sounds. It's just different from home. At home with one child or two, it's going to be quieter than in a room with 15 children. And some children really react to those loud noises, or they will really react that, like when they want to just be quiet, there's someone going there and climbing over them, and they don't know how to handle with those situations. And that's why I think the daycare environment is so great for children to develop those social skills, because they will be exposed to situations that they're not going to be exposed to at home.
Yeah. And I think, so I guess like carrying on like with them kind of in the service or the center, obviously for us, the NQS compliance is kind of our game, and one of those kind of within those quality areas is the like kind of allowing children to regulate their own behavior. So I was just going to ask you, kind of, how fine is the line where we encourage positive behavior, but then also allow children to kind of regulate that as well?
Well, I believe that there's a range of things that has to be in place before that. But if a child, like in our center, for example, we have the whole environment is set up to allow those emotions to happen. For example, we have every classroom has a quiet corner. It's a corner that is secluded from the rest of the center. It's cozy, it's welcoming, and that's a place that they can go when they need a breather. So that place will allow them to be there. Everything in the environment is representing their interests. So we have all these preventative strategies that are put in place to minimize those challenging behaviors or those tantrums from happening. But they also have expectations of the rooms. Every classroom has a photo and with an expectation of them. For example, feet on the ground. Gentle hands. Instead of saying gentle hands, we say keep your hands to your body so they don't touch somebody else. So they have all these rules in place. When children are not following through, they do remind them of their expectations. But they come with curiosity. The educators are supposed to observe, wait and see, and then let it be for the situation, so they know how if the child is able to regulate those behaviors by themselves, or if they need support. And they are there. If your child is having a breakdown, they don't try to say, you're okay, you'll be fine. They just stay there as a supportive person for a hug if the child needs it, or just holding their hands as they are there, just allowing the child to feel those feelings without having to intervene every time, but not abandoning them and say, okay, you figure it out by yourself. It's important to keep yourself there in the room when a child is having, trying to regulate their own emotions. And you can say, I know it's quite frustrating, isn't it? It's frustrating when someone takes something from you and you are empathizing with the child and they don't feel guilty about those feelings. I think that's when, you encourage the positive behavior when it's happening. But when they are trying to regulate those emotions, it is important to empathize and know that it's okay for children to cry. It's okay for them to be angry. They are completely natural feelings. And it's amazing that they're actually externalizing that in front of you, because it means that they feel safe with you. Children usually, they don't externalize their feelings if they don't feel safe. They tend to shut down. So we encourage the positive behaviors while it's happening. Like if you see them making great choices, we go and say, wow, I really like the way you're sharing your toy with your friends. Look at you. You are focusing so much on your painting. You can say, these things when they're doing that. But when they are trying to regulate their emotions, you can just acknowledge that, be there and empathize, be quiet if you need it be. And after that, you say, it makes me feel upset too when that happens. And just offer that hug. And then when the child has come down, then you can give them strategies. Next time, how about if you just ask your friend? You just tell them, stop. In my personal space, stop. And then you walk away. And it's the time that you give them strategies.
I'm no medical expert. Obviously, I'm a software expert, not so much in the medical field. But the topic around challenging behaviours and kids with anger issues and all that kind of stuff, it always tracks back to stuff like ADHD and ADD and so forth. Do you feel like there's a big, what's the word I'm trying to get at is a quick diagnosis, so to speak. That child there is bad behaviour. It's all down to ADHD. We have to get him on some sort of medication and so forth. Are you seeing a lot of that rather than the whole therapy, the stuff that you're trying to do I'm assuming without medication and whatnot?
My idea is to decrease that from happening, because what happens is that people feel, adults or educators or parents, they feel like they don't have the tools to deal with those behaviors. So sometimes it's easy to, not easy to blame, because I'm not saying that they are doing that because they want to find a solution, but it's just the easiest option up there. It must be something wrong with my child because I'm doing everything right. But when I do my consultancy with parents, when I start asking questions, they are like, oh, actually, yes. No, I don't tell them what is expected of them. I don't give them rules of, like before we go to the supermarket, like, you know what I mean? Like they just expect children to know what they know on the 30s or the 20s. But children are just born like a white piece of paper. There's nothing there. We are there to feed everything, every information about social rules and, everything. And then they rely on us for that guidance. I believe that it could be what would lead people to refer children, because they might think, oh, it must be something wrong with the child without seeing the whole context first. But I don't know, to be honest. I haven't had, in my 20 years, I haven't had a child that was referred and it was diagnosed without me knowing for sure, even though I can't diagnose. But by seeing thousands and thousands of children, throughout these 20 years, it's easy now to see the difference, and which children are actually ADD or they are on the spectrum. And I haven't had one child that was diagnosed and the child was not. Usually when we referred, it's like, because here in Queensland, for example, if we refer children, they get OT sessions, they have speech therapy, and everything. It's an amazing support that parents can get for free. And we want to take advantage of that, because if they are there before they go to school, they are already in the system, so they can get extra support if it need to be. And they do encourage us to refer as early as possible, so they can get into the system and they can get assessed and get the support needed as early as possible. So those interventions are important, because some of the behaviors can change so much with the right approaches and the right interventions at an early age. I believe that we see more diagnosis because years ago, we used to just refer to those children to maybe, obnoxious, children, or odd, and now there's a name for it. And even though it can be a bit scary to know that, it is also good because it allows children to get all those extra support that they need in order to have a much more independent and fulfilled life later in an adult life. So, I try to decrease the amount of referrals by applying those strategies, but I don't think they are being overdiagnosed. I think that when they are diagnosed, at least in my experience, it has been, expected. But I do believe that you can decrease the amount of referrals if you have the right strategies in place.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
On the topic of referrals, so recently we spoke to someone who was all about kind of early intervention, and it seems like there's no kind of overarching approach to referrals in Australia. And I know there's a lot of educators who kind of struggle with that side of things. Do you want to maybe talk about kind of your approach to referral and how you find success with that?
I have been following this procedure. I spoke to my educators, and they have done lots of professional developments on speech therapy and everything that has been offered to them. And the procedure is, if we think in the back of our minds that there could be something wrong, and like if they fit the red flags, that the Australian red flags for referral, that if they are not at a certain development stage that they should be, we refer them and we tell the parents, look, we're just putting them in the system. Sometimes it can take up to 6 months for them to see a specialist. So if by the time they get called, you think they're fine and they have developed the language really well, or all the problems that we're concerned now are not a problem anymore, then you don't have to go. So I prefer to refer and then wait for the system to solve. And by the time they're called, then we can make a decision if the parents will go or not. But I really believe in earlier referral because, like I said, if you can apply those tools and use everything that you have in your favor to support children, why not? I don't see any harm. I don't think it's going to damage them in any way. It's just going to benefit them. And if by the time they get called, the referral is not necessary anymore, they don't have to go.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a helpful approach. Last couple of things, I kind of wanted to touch on something that I noticed on your social media, and that was you're a fan of kind of one thing you mentioned was martial arts being good for behavior, and especially when it comes to being bullied. I know that, I guess the kind of simple thought process would be like, well, why would you want to kind of promote violence? But do you want to maybe talk about how that would kind of de-escalate violence?
I think, for example, in my Instagram, I talked about jiu-jitsu because that was something that my son was doing. He now stopped for a bit. He's just focusing on soccer, but he was doing for a long time. And we have had many conversations, at the martial arts gym that he was going, the collective. And it definitely changed a lot in him and many children. And when I had a conversation with the owners, they told me that they see that it supports the development of their self-confidence, the resilience. They learn about how to respect themselves and others. And it's not about aggression because they learn how to defend themselves and how to manage the situation once they have been attacked. but they know the rules that they're not supposed to be fighting outside of the mat. So they cannot do that. But just the feeling of knowing that they know how to defend themselves, for some reason, it just works so well in their confidence that they're not a victim of bullying, because they carry that confidence approach that they're like, I know I can, like I'm confident. I know I can defend myself. And it works so well on the self-esteem, just makes them feel so powerful about themselves that it doesn't, it doesn't happen to them. And I believe that it's really important. I have seen children that, like, going through that gym, that they suffered domestic violence and they were extremely sensitive children and worked so well on the self-esteem. They were like the biggest competitors, after a few years. And you can see a difference on those children before when they started the classes. Then after 2 years, after 6 months, it's a huge difference, because it's an amazing transition, because I believe that bullies do not feed on confident children. They feed on the ones that react to them and give an emotional response. And that's what your child won't give if he's doing a type of, or he or she is doing a type of martial arts, because that's what works. They work on their self-esteem and on their confidence and respect about others as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And about the weapon play that you asked, I am a children's defender on their own imagination. I really defend that, because I believe that we allowed girls to have all the fairy play and princesses and everything, but when it comes to boys, because usually boys tend to like more weapon play and superheroes, there's a lot of fighting and things, and I have worked in many centers and seen many parents have said, no, stop right there, this is aggressive. I don't want you playing, it's too violent. And like, if we're gonna think about it, like for me, then like if you go to the same type of thinking, being a princess is also not good, because you don't have a voice. You do as you're told. The man has to carry you and make you happy forever. Like, I don't want my child to have that type of thinking. I want my daughter to be, strong and to know what she wants, and she's not going to rely on a man. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I feel like with boys, somehow then they can't be rough, even though children, especially boys, they do rely on that touch, and that touch of being touched like firmly and rough. They like that rough play. That's why they like martial arts and this type of games, and they like knowing about, for them, playing this fantasy and reality game is like baddies and goodies and superheroes and power. That's their fantasy. That's what they find interesting. So why do we have to stop that? I just don't. I just see it as another type of dramatic play. And I don't know you, but I used to love to play outside in the streets with all my friends, all my neighbors, and we always played that. Police and robbers, and and playing, like pretending to have guns and everything, because back then, 30 years ago, it wasn't cheap to buy those little guns, plastic guns, So we just pretended we made our own with sticks, and we pretend to play, and thanks goodness we all are completely normal and nobody hurt anyone. You know what I mean? I think that it's just a misconception. It's not that because it's not encouraging, and not even encouraging, but just respecting that type of play and recognizing that that's where the interest is at, is not going to affect how violent they're going to be as an adult. It actually is the opposite, because they're going to feel respected, and they're going to feel like you take notice of what they like, and you respect even though you don't like. And even as a parent, when my son comes and asks me if I want to play with those Nerf guns, it's not my thing. I don't like it. And I don't know if it's because I'm a girl, I just don't get it, and then I'm like, I start playing with him. It's like, Mom, it's not like that. So he goes and asks Dad, and they have fun, and they hide behind bushes, and they love playing, and, and they shoot at each other. But then we have rules for that play. When we're playing with the Nerf guns, you can't shoot when it's too close, because it hurts. And you can't shoot on the head. So, we come up with rules. That's the rules in our family. But in a kindergarten or, in a daycare center, you can come up with the rules as well. Like the children can get involved in creating those rules. So we can ask them, what do you think is okay? What do you think is not okay? Because they're usually going to start with this type of play when they're over 3 years old. So they'll be able to tell you what they think is acceptable, what's not acceptable. And, asking permission. Do you want to join my game? And just don't start, suddenly shooting at someone if they don't want to play with you. So, invite your friends. Who wants to play with me? We're going to play, police and robbers or superheroes. Who wants to join us? And then you play with the people that want to be part of that game. And the rule is, let's make up these rules. What do you think it should be? And that's how you can, intervene in that way. But stopping it, I don't believe. I think then when we're stopping it, we're just not listening to them and not respecting their will and what they want to do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, totally agree with that. If you had to give, like, from everything we've kind of talked about in that realm, if you had to give one tip for anyone listening, educators, parents, anyone of the like, what would that be?
In regards to children's behaviors, I believe that educators and parents shouldn't take it personal. Their attitude is not a reflection of what they are as a parent or as an educator. Their reactions and their attitudes, it's just a reflection of what they are feeling inside. And when you come with curiosity and you observe, wait and see and identify triggers, let it be, you will be able to support this child so much. And there was a phrase that I heard once, and I thought that it was just magical, and it just kept with me forever. That it said, "A child who needs a child who needs your love the most is going to ask you in the most inappropriate ways." And I think when you change your way of perceiving it, everything will change. Everything, your whole perception of challenging behaviors will change, and it will become easier for you to identify and support those children. And then you can role model what's expected of them too.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Well said.
You've got some event coming up soon around that 5 love languages, have you?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. I'll allow you to plug it. Go on.
Yes. Yeah, so tomorrow we will hold a workshop at our center at Currumbin Pines Early Learning Center, which is on the Gold Coast. And it's going to be a face-to-face workshop. And I have already 30 parents, between parents and educators, they're coming. But we still have some spots left. And we're going to be talking about the 5 love languages of children and how you can communicate your love to children and make them feel loved and valued. To use this tool to decrease challenging behaviors, to decrease those meltdowns. I'm not saying they're going to stop forever, because they won't. Otherwise, we're all humans. But we'll be able to use those tools and those strategies to support children to feel loved and to feel connected with us. And I'm sure that those tantrums will decrease.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent.
So if you've got any events coming on, like, after that, where can people find out more information and find out more about you?
I'm on Instagram. My Instagram page is called Educational Solution Consultancy, and you can find me there, or you can find information on our Instagram page for the center, which is Currumbin Pines, which is CURRUMBIN Pines PINES ELC. And you'll be able to find us there as well. I'll be advertising the workshops there too.
Excellent.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much again for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day. So thanks.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.